Hello everyone and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady and today Games Workshop released some new information about 9th edition, so I figured I'd make a quick video going over that new information with you guys. So without wasting any more time, let's just jump right into it. So this new information can be found on the Warhammer Community page, and it's going over Warhammer 40k match play, which I think is going to be what they're saying is tournament play now, points, and the app. So let's go over everything. A new edition offers the perfect opportunity not only improves a game's core rules, but also to reevaluate other areas of the game and make adjustments, to redress the balance of Warhammer 40k in line with the updates of the game itself. Some significant changes have been made to match play rules. To fill us in on all of the changes, here's Mike Brandt, one of our esteemed Warhammer 40k playtesters and now officially our global events guru. So matched play missions. A lot of work went into making these new missions the best ever. The Warhammer 40k rules team drew on all the feedback from the wider gaming community, playtesters, and event organizers to ensure that each mission offers a fun, challenging experience with a fair chance of success for each player. There are two key elements I look for in a mission. Does it tell a cool story? After all, Warhammer 40k should be an immersive experience with gorgeous armies and scenic tables. Does it increase the odds of a close, fair, exciting game experience? The mission should not decide it for you, nor should a bad matchup guarantee a loss. I agree with what he's saying here. The new match play missions exemplify these principles in abundance. What's more, there are a lot of missions. They all share certain common elements while presenting unique challenges. It's hard to build one's list to win them all. Each mission utilizes bespoke deployment zones and primary objectives according to the number of points being used, creating a sensible story and intentional balance. For example, incursion missions are used for games of 1,000 points per side, while strike force missions cater to 2,000 point battles. Yet, even though the missions each share a primary objective, the secondary objectives are asymmetrical and are actually chosen by the players themselves. The primary represents the shared story on the battlefield, while the secondaries represent your army's theme and help balance through matchups. So what this sounds like to me is they're going the style of ITC missions, where both players have the exact same primary scoring, which is what they're saying here, primary objective, and then each player picks from a list of secondary objectives that they try to score against their opponent. Stuff like Big Game Hunter, kill a vehicle for 10 wounds. So you take that against somebody that has vehicles that you think you're going to kill throughout the game. Or Headhunter, get a point for killing a character. So from what it sounds like, these missions are more or less going to be pretty close to ITC missions, which I like, because ITC missions, for those of you that don't know, have been my favorite mission set for years now. I haven't really played anything other than ITC missions for like 2 years, because the last time I did it was, I think, the chapter approved missions in 2018, and I didn't like the balance around it. They did better with the chapter approved missions when compared to the previous chapter approved and the main rulebook missions, but ITC missions just felt so much more balanced, because ITC missions have proven that tournaments want to use them. They're the most used missions at tournament, I believe. I don't really have the numbers to back that up, but anecdotally, and I'm assuming a lot of people can vouch for this as well, ITC missions were the most popular missions at tournaments in the ITC. So it would make sense that Games Workshop wants to adopt something like those missions, because a lot of people like those missions. So moving on, they have all of the battle sizes now. So we have Combat Patrol, which is 500 points or less, I assume, and that gives you 3 command points for your army. Incursion is 1,000 points, 6 command points. Strike Force is 2,000, 12 command points, and Onslaught, which is basically like a mini apocalypse game, is 18 command points. So what this means now is certain armies like Imperial Guard are kind of nerfed, but at the same time, they're kind of buffed. And armies that used to struggle making a battalion or multiple battalions, like Custodes, are actually very buffed from this, because now no matter what kind of list they bring to the table, as long as it's 2,000 points, they're going to have their 12 command points just like everybody else. Getting back to the Guard though, so hear me out on this. Imperial Guard used to be able to bring like the most command points out of any army in the game, because they had the cheapest brigade, they have the cheapest units to bring that brigade, blah 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 blah. Thing is though, is Astra Militarum, at least from the times that I've played them and played against them, all of their stratagems are good, but they're not like super impactful good. They're all like little bonuses here and there. Astra Militarum really honestly doesn't need that many command points in order to function like a normal army. So I think 12 command points is fine for an army like Astra Militarum. When I say it's a buff for them, It's because they aren't forced anymore into taking 3 battalions or like a brigade in a battalion or anything like that. You still can if you want to play with that many troops and that many HQs, which to be fair with Astra Militarum I kind of recommend anyways. But if you want to bring something like just 1 battalion and a couple of spearheads, or maybe you want to bring 3 spearheads, or maybe you want to bring 3 Baneblades as your list, you know what I mean? Now you have command points to be able to have other options instead of being forced into the similar list we've seen in the past, which is usually like 2 battalions and a spearhead, or 3 battalions, or a brigade and a battalion and stuff like that. Now the army has more options. So in a way, it's, I don't know, maybe buff is the wrong word, but it just allows different play styles and different armies to actually see play on competitive tables, which I like. I like variety. I don't like the idea of one style of play being the go-to for every army. I've went with it because that's how 8th edition kind of was for a while, because you needed those command points, and battalions and brigades were the way to get those command points. But now with the way that they're doing this, it sounds like you'll be able to play whatever army you actually want, as long as you build it well and you have all the proper elements of a good competitive list. You don't have to worry about being short on command points because you picked the wrong detachments. And for armies like Custodes, this is amazing for them because they don't have to bring a battalion at all if they don't want to. They can just spam their Caladius Grav tanks and their Pallas Grav tanks and an Orion dropship if they really wanted to. And they'll still get their 12 command points. To be fair though, I don't think they have very many stratagems that work with that kind of stuff anyways, so they don't really need the command points in that style of list, but hey, they get a bunch of rerolls, I guess. And really quickly, Future Brady chiming in while I'm editing this video. Based off of stuff that I read later on in the video, I don't think a list that's pure damage, kind of like the Custodes list I just went over with like the Caladius Grav tanks and the Orion dropship and the Pallas Grav tanks, I don't think that's going to be as functional in 9th edition based off of some of the stuff that I'll read later on in the video. So if you were one of the people that were worried about people bringing like a Space Marine list with nothing but Centurions in it, trust me, I don't think that's going to be a thing based off of, again, stuff that I've read later on in this video. So just, yeah, please continue with the video and we'll get into that when we get into unit actions. And in a lot of my videos and in a lot of the lists and coaching that I do with patrons, I personally always thought that 10 command points, like somewhere between 10 to 13 command points, is like the sweet spot that you want to start a game at. So I'm glad that they went with 12 command points for a 2,000 point list instead of something like 20 or something less than 12, because I think those would have been too extreme in either direction. I think 12 is the perfect number. Are you running Sneaky Raven Guard army? Score secondaries to score victory points for planting homing beacons or infiltrating the enemy's deployment zones. World Eaters? Focus on secondaries that reward reaping skulls for the throne, not standing on objectives. This enables an overall mission that makes sense for your army's theme but also improves balance. Not equipped to kill those paladins? Choose secondaries focused on maneuver. See, they even say maneuver here, because if you remember, they have maneuvering secondaries in ITC now, and they have... oh, I forget what they're actually called, but I call them kill secondaries. So basically what they're saying here is, again, it's just kind of emphasizing these are probably going to be very close to how ITC is played, which I am all totally for. So now, technically, if Games Workshop is just adopting the same ideas of the ITC missions, there's no need for the ITC missions anymore, because Games Workshop missions will be standardized. So I'm actually very happy that Games Workshop has adopted the ITC missions, because they were the most accepted missions out of all for tournament play. So yeah, I can't wait to see more about it. Oh, I guess we have some here. Secondary objectives. When you're instructed to select secondary objectives, you can select any presented here in addition to any secondary objective listed on the mission you are playing. You can score no more than 15 victory points for each secondary objective you select during the mission. Any excess victory points are awarded are discounted. Each secondary objective listed below has a category, Purge the Enemy. When you select a secondary objective, you cannot choose more than one from each category. So again, very similar to ITC, except ITC had it so that you could only pick two. There was 2 different categories. There was the maneuvering secondaries and the kill secondaries. And you could only pick 2 from one of those categories and 1 from the other one. Apparently now they're going to have 3 different categories, and you can pick 1 secondary objective from each one of those categories. So Purge the Enemy, Assassinate, that's something that we had, except in ITC, except it was called Headhunter, but Assassinate makes more sense now that I think about it. No Mercy, No Respite. Thin their ranks. Oh, so I guess this is probably where it says Purge the Enemy is the category. So No Mercy, No Respite. Thin their ranks. If you select this objective, keep a tally of kill points. Each time an enemy model is destroyed, add 1 to this tally. So this is the Reaper, basically. In ITC, they have a secondary where if you do 80 wounds to infantry or kill 80 models, you get your 4 victory points for maxing out that secondary. This is basically just the Reaper, except it's probably a little bit different. I can't click on this to see the whole thing, so I assume they really only wanted to show us the top half. Shadow Operations. Score victory points each time a unit from your army successfully completes the following action. Investigate site. Action. 1 infantry unit. So this action thing, I read something about it on Facebook. A guy that I follow posted it there. Basically, the way it sounds like is in order to like hold an objective or something like that, you're going to have to give up an action, which means you might not be able to like shoot later on that turn or something like that. So there's going to be risk and reward now for being on an objective, whereas in 8th edition you could just stand on an objective, hold that objective while also shooting and fighting and not really losing anything from wanting to gain that objective. But depending on how they go about it and investigate site action, this kind of confirms what the guy was talking about that I read on Facebook. But yeah, so you might have to give up actions now in order to hold objectives, which means it's going to be more tactical rather than just like an automatic, well, I'll just go stand on this objective and I'll shoot those guys over there. Now you got to think about it. Do I really need to shoot those guys over there, or do I really need that objective? And that's the kind of play and tactics that I like in the game, where not everything is a clear-cut choice and you actually have to make tactical decisions in order to win the game. So if that is the case, I like it. We just got to see how they implement it. Future Brady back again. So that's what I was kind of talking about when I said if someone wants to bring an entire list full of Centurions. If they do, well, they're going to have to give up a ton of points worth of their shooting in their army in order to hold objectives, which you will have to do if these are like ITC missions, because most ITC missions are won off of the primary scoring, which is holding objectives, really. Holding objectives and sometimes killing units. So although secondaries help, secondaries are more or less the tiebreakers in my opinion, and the primary scoring is where you want to get your most points and where the majority of games are going to be won or lost. So again, if someone brings a ton of Centurions, they have to give up shooting with a ton of points worth of models, or they have to give up getting points for standing on those objectives. So that's why I don't think those types of lists will be a problem in 9th edition, but again, we're just going to have to wait and see everything else that gets released when 9th edition is released. The new edition also adds to Warhammer 40,000. Traditionally, your models could either stand near objectives or shoot punch. No longer. You can perform rituals, plant homing beacons, raise banners on key objectives, and more. This creates dynamic moments where you may need to decide between firing at the enemy or bravely accomplishing a mission. This is basically exactly what I was just talking about. Another new feature is a cap on victory points you can earn from each mission element. This makes for closer, more exciting games. In the past, a slower starting army or one without a strong alpha strike, I like how they're adopting these terms that we use in the competitive community now, risked falling irrevocably behind the opponent. Every mission condition can only be scored a certain number of times, giving players the opportunity to catch up if their opponent runs out of gas after capping. This creates a wider variety of great stories, photo finishes, and viable armies. An example of one of the new Eternal War missions can be seen here, including several sneak peek of these concepts in place. Okay, so we got a full mission here. So Eternal War, Strike Force, the 4 pillars. So it looks like they're adopting ITC objective placement, where it's just predetermined. I kind of don't like that the deployment is already predetermined. I kind of liked rolling off for deployment and stuff, but I guess it's probably easier to balance this way because you don't have to balance your objective placement for 6 different styles of deployment. You now only have to do it for the one. So, and then it makes practicing for that mission even easier because you're always going to have this same deployment. So I guess that's the bonus. Mission rules. In this mission, reinforcement units cannot be set up within range of any objective markers. Interesting. Primary objectives. Victory points are awarded for controlling objective markers as follow. Take and hold, progressive. At the end of each player's command phase, which is a new phase that they've announced for 9th edition. I don't know if you guys have heard about it yet, but basically they're adding in the command phase, which is similar to Age of Sigmar's hero phase, I believe it was called. The players whose turn it is scores 5 victory points for each of the following conditions they satisfy for a maximum of 15 victory points. So again, maxing out at technically 5, being able to accomplish it 5 times. They control 1 or more objectives, they control 2 or more objectives, they control more objectives than their opponent. This primary objective cannot be scored in the first battle round. So Future Brady back again, now that I understand this a little bit better. So I had read it wrong originally when I recorded the video, but if you notice, it says that you score these at the end of your command phase. Your command phase is the first phase of the game. This means you can't move on to an objective and then score it. This means that your unit will have to have survived on that objective through your opponent's entire turn for you to be able to get those points, making it significantly harder to get these primary points. It also has some counterplay to it because you can't just move on to an objective and be like, hey, this is mine now, I get points. Now your opponent actually gets to shoot you off those objectives or send troops over there to steal those objectives from you and stuff like that. So it's kind of similar to ITC in a way, but very different because ITC used to have it at the end of the battle round, but in these missions, it's at the end of the command phase for each player. At least it sounds like that. So based off my first impressions of this, the way they're doing it now for scoring these objectives is a buff to elite units, but also in a way still makes cheap troop choices viable, because the elite units are obviously going to be better at standing on the objective and surviving, like being shot at, until the next turn, so that that elite unit can score that victory point for being on that objective. But cheap troops like guardsmen that have utility through stuff like the order move, they're still going to be important as well, because if you can't shoot those like 3 custodies off that objective, well, just send in 10 guardsmen to go steal it from them because you outnumber them and have objectives secured. So I feel like the way that they're doing capturing objectives now favors both elite and like horde infantry. So I find it very interesting, and yeah, I can't wait to see all the rules that go around this to make the full picture. But overall, again, I'm really liking everything that I hear, and it sounds like 9th is actually going to be pretty tactical. And here's the big change that I noticed a lot of my patrons were like pulling their hair out over when I joined the Discord this morning. So yeah, apparently they're raising the points of all the units in the game. I am perfectly okay with that. The thing is I don't know if the balance is quite there, but I have faith, so maybe they are, I don't know. I just feel like an intercessor is worth 4 times as much as a cultist, so if an intercessor is now 20 points per model, a cultist should probably be about 5. But if that is the case and the cultists need to go down a point, well then that'll probably happen in chapter approved, which isn't going to be too far off from the time 9th edition releases. With that said, I'm totally okay with them increasing points, because if you guys didn't notice, at the beginning of 8th edition, you could buy a 2,000 point Space Marine army. But by the end of 8th edition, that 2,000 point army is probably only about 1,600 points. Because everything like went down in points as the edition progressed, because that was Games Workshop's way of balancing a lot of units, is lowering it in points cost. Because it seems like Games Workshop, their value on what points meant was a little bit weird. So certain units that should have costed more were just immediately like less at the beginning, and the ones that should have cost less had to go down in points, instead of just going the other way around and making the other units more in points. Because that's the thing about nerfing and buffing. Everybody loves a buff, nobody loves a nerf. So if you take the armies that are doing well and you nerf them, you're going to piss off those players. But if you take the armies that are doing bad and you buff them by decreasing points, you're just going to make players happy. So I'm all about buffs over nerfs, and so that's why over the course of 8th edition, certain armies just were able to fit a lot more into their lists because the points were kind of out of whack at the beginning of 8th edition. For example, an anecdotal example, I was hosting a tournament in August, and there was an extra table there, and there was a guy there that was just there to like learn the game and watch. He just got into the game at the beginning of 8th edition, went out and bought a 2,000 point army at the beginning of 8th edition, and me and him were going to play a game since I had some downtime until somebody needed like a rules question or something like that. And so he went home and grabbed his army to come play me, and he came back and he's like, this army of Dark Angels is 2,000 points. So then I went into Battlescribe and made a list for him out of all the units he had. He only had about like 1,500-ish points, 1,600-ish points. So yeah, that's basically exactly what happened. Everything, especially armies like Space Marines, just went down in points. So a 2,000 point game at the beginning of 8th edition looked like a 1,500-ish point of a game at the end of 8th edition. So raising the points, they're just bringing it back to what I assume Games Workshop originally intended for the size of like 2,000 point games to be, which I think is perfectly fine. That means there's going to be less models on the board, which means games are going to go by quicker. There's going to be less need for chess clocks, although I still hope that ITC tournaments still stick with chess clocks, because there are people out there that are still going to slow play and stuff like that. And also in hindsight, it's going to cost a lot less money in order to make a 2,000 point list to compete at tournaments with your friends. So this is really going to help new players that want to get into the game, because they're not going to have to spend as much in order to get a full army. But yeah, I'm all for the points going up. It also makes it, like I was saying in my previous 9th edition video, it makes it easier to balance, because now you can have a Chaos Cultist be 6 points and a Guardsman can be like 7 points or 8 points, because a Guardsman is slightly better than a Chaos Cultist. So by raising these points, it also makes it better and easier to balance these small little differences in units. Because with the way the points were before, a Chaos Cultist being 3 points is probably a little overpowered. And a Chaos Cultist being 5 points is nobody would play that unit. Like, that's exactly what happened when Chaos Cultists went up to 5 points. But now that they're increasing everything across the board, I think it's fine. If you have a squad of 5 intercessors and you want to stand on an objective, if they have to give up their shooting, that's 100 points worth of shooting that you're giving up in order to stand on that objective. For Chaos Cultists, you're only giving up 60 points for 10 guys to stand on that objective, and you only give up your 60 points worth of shooting. So it could be balanced around that. Again, we have to fully wait and see what all the rules are. I'm just kind of speculating. But yeah, overall though, I'm totally okay with them increasing points across the board for all the units in the game. The rest of the points for all the units in the game, that's going to be very interesting to see. I really hope that Games Workshop just posts them for free online, or on this app that they're releasing, instead of forcing us to buy like an index again, like we did at the beginning of 8th edition. So we'll have to see how they go about that. They do say down here that the app will be launched alongside the pre-orders of Warhammer 40k, or I guess Warhammer 40k rulebook. So, and it doesn't say if they're charging for the app either, so the app might actually be free, which I'm hoping is the case, because that will bring a lot of players into the game and make it more welcoming for people that don't want to spend an arm and a leg in order to play this game. But yeah, overall, after reading all of this, I'm super excited about seeing these missions now, because I think for the first time, Games Workshop has taken the perfect direction for balancing missions, and at least for competitive play, because they went to the source, I assume. I know that Reese is part of the team that helped them develop these missions, and Reese is the guy from Frontline Gaming who helps run the ITC. So yeah, they clearly adopted ITC stuff for these missions, and I think that's a good thing, because ITC is obviously doing well competitive wise, and a lot of people love those missions and love using them for competitive play. So I am super happy that Games Workshop finally adopted the ITC mindset and the missions. Even though they're slightly different, I'm assuming they're going to be very close to the same. So with that said, maybe ITC won't even need their own missions anymore, because ITC's whole point was trying to standardize missions so that every tournament was using very similar missions. And yeah, if these missions are just like that, then there's no need for ITC missions. These can be the standard missions, because they seem, from looking at them, they seem like they're going to be pretty balanced. But again, we're going to have to wait and see everything that comes out. I'm also super excited to see what the points of all the models are. And yeah, so basically everything I read out of this, I like everything that I've read so far. The only thing I'm kind of iffy about is Cultists being 6 points. They probably should be like 5, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, overall, I'm loving this, and I can't wait for more information to come out. So with that said, that's pretty much the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. Hit that like button if you like this type of content, because I will be making a ton of competitive tactics focused content when 9th edition does arrive. So yeah, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you can get notified when I make those videos. And also, if you like what I do here on the channel, check me out on Patreon. I offer coaching and list building services, which is something that you might be able to make use of when 9th edition arrives. If you don't really know where to start or how to make a list for that edition, I'm going to read the rules thoroughly and figure everything out, and I'm going to start helping people build lists and building my own list for future tournaments. And I guess with that said, thanks to all my patrons, I love you all, and thanks to all of you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this stuff. I still read every comment on my channel, and yeah, that's it. So thanks for watching, and happy wargaming.